well, it's Thursday, or Throwback Thursday, as some like to call it on Facebook and stuff. So I'd like to take you back to some of my memories with my Z-Bots, one of my favorite toys of my childhood. I already mentioned these in my 90s video, so I don't need to go too deep in detail about their background. Like I already mentioned how they were made by Micro Machines. There was like at least 3 series of them, and they were also at Burger King and stuff like that. So let me take you to some of the memories. I had a lot of these. I had a lot of them. I still do, actually, I should say. My brother did too. We used to have all kinds of crazy wars and stuff, and we would quote like movies and stuff. I remember playing with my neighbor one time, and my neighbor and I were all playing with them, and my neighbor also had some old Fisher-Price toys. Like, you know, we'd mix everything together. Anything that was 2 inches tall, we'd mix them all together. So we were playing with them with my neighbor, and my brother and I just watched all the Police Academy movies. So my brother kept quoting them, like we were like the scene in Police Academy 2 with the bar. Like one of the guys like, "I'm going in, I'm coming out." Yeah, that was a good time. So I remember an old friend of mine. I brought my Z-Bots over to his house, and for whatever reason, I had a marker in the box. So he took the marker and he drew a Z because let me see if I can find one. Yeah, well, here's one. He drew like a Z-Bot Z on his arm with the marker. That was funny. Yeah, there was also these camouflage type ones, like military ones, which was pretty cool. They had vehicles and stuff. One of the camouflage Z-Bots. Excuse me. My brother used to make stop animation movies, like very simple stop animation. It wasn't like Robot Chicken exactly, but it was more just like, you know what I mean? Like just frame by frame type of stuff. He had them all on a tape, a VHS tape that he recorded with an really old video camera that our stepfather had. We called it excuse me, he called it Z-Bot's Greatest Adventures. Years later, he taped over it for whatever reason. I don't think I've ever let him live that down either. Yeah, it's probably something that we used to have all kinds of old Fisher-Price houses and stuff. I remember we had one that was like an old Western cowboy house thing or something. So this thing my brother and I used to do was back with Series 1, before of the Z-Bots. We were pretending he set up a bunch of his Z-Bots on the, I think it was his idea, so like we'd switch back and forth, but it was like, for example, he'd set up a bunch of his Z-Bots on the house thing on different areas, and we'd turn off all the lights so it'd be dark. And then I'd take a flashlight and this old gun that he had, toy gun that would make like a gunshot noise, like so and it was supposed to be like I was a giant robot, and so it's like I'd use the flashlight to find, and it's like if I'd see the flashlight, I'd shine the flashlight on the Z-Bot, and I'd say, like, target located, and then shoot him with the gun, and then my brother would make him fall off and die, and then we would switch, and I'd put my Z-Bots on there, and he'd do he'd be the giant robot with the light and stuff. That was fun. I remember in, I want to say 95, because it came out in the fall of 94, was, Final Fantasy 3, or Final Fantasy 6, on the Super Nintendo version, at least here in the US, was called Final Fantasy 3. That's a whole nother story, but I remember watching my brother play that all the time, so I used to try and reenact it. Almost, I mean, I'd play kind of like a Final Fantasy thing with my Z-Bots, so I'd have them set up like like this, like in a line. And basically I would line them up, and then have them, like, attack, like, and then attack, you know, an enemy. Like in Final Fantasy, I'd have them fight, like, larger creatures. You know, like in Final Fantasy, fighting bosses and stuff. It was fun. I don't know why, I like doing that. I remember, this was probably the same year, or the following year. So I think Donkey Kong Country 2 came out in 95, but I could be wrong, but those were great memorable games. Those were a lot of fun. My brother and I used to play those all the time, was the Donkey Kong Country games for Super Nintendo, and, the second one, we were playing that so much that we, kind of created our own thing, like Final Fantasy, like, we had made this adventure game with our Z-Bots, kind of like Donkey Kong Country, or Adventure Platform, or whatever. I forget who he was, but I remember I was a Battle Beast, which is what these are. They were late 80s, so my brother grew up with them more than I did, but he had a bunch of them when we were kids. He had, it wasn't this one, but he was like a blue horse a light blue horse with blue armor, so I remember that's who I was, and this is Evil the Cat, the old Evil from Earthworm Jim, and what I did was, I think it was my brother's idea, but I forget, I took a rubber band and tied it around my waist, so it's like he was my pet cat, and he was riding on my back. And there was an old arcade across the street from our house that we used to go to, and they had these silver coins that were worth like 5 tickets. So my brother, he had a jar of them, so we used that kind of like because I think you could do that. I haven't played Donkey Kong Country 2 since I was a kid, but I think there was like some type of tokens you could get in the game called like banana tokens or something. You use them to, you like find them hidden throughout the levels and use them to buy like upgrades or temporary power-ups or things like that, or extra lives, things like that. So we did kind of the same thing. We had those silver coins, and we used the silver coins that he had. We had them hidden throughout our adventure, if you will. And one of these guys, not this one in particular, because my brother had quite a few of them, but we used him and called him Cranky, like Cranky Kong. And he, it was like we'd take the coins to him to buy upgrades or power-ups. Like, I remember we used these little minis, as they were called. They were like, so it's like, I think I got one of them. I think my brother got something too, but I forget what it was. I think this was one of the things we got, was like these little mini-Zs you would fly around and help, like almost like a familiar in, what's it called, Gauntlet. They also had these came with like armor that was like 2 pieces. Whoops. It had like, it was like, it would go on the front and the back. Oh, that's not the armor, but I don't have the armor. We had those, we had them. That was one of the things we did, one of the levels, if you will, because, you know, we used our imagination, but we had them all lined up, so it was supposed to be like it was a swamp, and those were platforms we were jumping across. I remember the silver coin, one of the silver coins was hidden underneath one of those platforms. I think him and I got into an argument over who was going to get it. And I remember that he, just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, one of the levels, there was a guy that we were chasing. Let's see if I can find him. I think I have him in here. It's another, sorry. He, where the hell is he? Yeah, I probably should have done this beforehand. Oh, here he is. Sorry about that. It's Major Mucus, another, get it, Major Mucus, because he's another Earthworm Jim character. I remember, it was like, I think it was like we fought him or like beat the crap out of him, and then he escaped, so then we pursued him. Yeah, this is still that Donkey Kong Country thing. We pursued him into, like a half-sunken ship or something. It was like the water was like knee-deep. And when the, and then he found like a cannon or something that he was shooting at us. So that's about all I remember about that, but that was a lot of fun. Probably one of the best memories I have with my brother from Z-Bots was we used to play beat-em-ups all the time, especially Turtles in Time for Super Nintendo. Yeah, it's my favorite video game genre, as I mentioned in my top 10 video game genres video. But it was like, we used to kind of create our own Turtles in Time type of thing. I remember I had like this old Fisher-Price City Street thing, and he had like this old Fisher-Price office building. So it was like, I remember it was, the one I had, it had like the first level was just kind of going through the city street, and then after that it was like on the top of the city street or something, because it was like, it had like 2 floors. And I remember it was like, it had like a garage door, like a fire station. So I remember it was like, what I used to do was like, I fought these 2 guys, and then the door would open, and it was, I was like 6 or 7, so, but it was like, I'd fight this, which was, it's a Knuckles, I think it was a Burger King or McDonald's toy, but, yeah, it doesn't work too well anymore, but that was the boss, because it was like Turtles in Time, hold on a second, not that one, just a moment, here's one. We used these guys, as I mentioned in my 90s video. My brother and I had so many of this guy, so we used them as like as foot soldiers. Like, so we had them as foot soldiers, and then we'd use bosses and stuff. We'd use the music from Turtles in Time, because that was one of the games where a lot of things you'd see with Super Nintendo games, you could listen to the music in the menu screen. So we'd use like, the music from the games, like the Alley Cat Blues and all that, or Big Apple 3 AM and all that, and then we'd use the actual boss music, and then we would have, so I think it was like, I'd do 3 levels with my City Street, he'd do 3 with his office building, and then it was like, we'd do like a travel level, so something like, I don't know, it was like, I'd have a vehicle, and or actually, better yet, perfect, I'd have some type of a vehicle, like this, we each have, and that was another thing, we'd each have, like a beat 'em up, it was like, I'd pick 3 of my Z-Bots to be, and he'd pick 3 of his, like, I don't know, these 3, for example. Sorry. Like these 3. So anyways, at the 4th level would be like a travel level, so I'd be like on this motorcycle, for example, and I'd come across other things like this. Because I remember, we used to have like, then we used to mix everything up. We'd use G.I. Joe vehicles and everything, so the boss would be some, like, huge G.I. Joe vehicle or something. I remember we'd use the music that would use either, like, the Sewer Surfing or the, Burying My Shell at Wounded Knee, one of those songs. And then it was like, then because of the traveling level, we'd switch, so I'd do 3 levels with his office building, he'd do 3 with my City Street, so it was kind of funny. It was almost, I don't want to say mine was better, but it was almost like it was more of it was the kind of thing you'd see in a classic arcade-style beat-em-up, like, so it was like my first 3 levels were, like, kind of around the city and stuff, and then it was like, for the final 3 levels, it would be, like, so, the 3 levels I did with his office building thing, it would be the first floor, then the second floor, then the rooftop, so that would basically be the last level was on the rooftop, which is, like I said, it's the kind of thing you'd see in a arcade-style beat-em-up. Yeah, good times, but, yeah, so, special shout-out for my brother, my sister, because she used to play with them too. our neighbor, all our old friends who used to play Z-Bots with us, anyone who remembers Z-Bots, and of course, Micro Machines. I love you guys, and as they say in Turtles in Time, thanks for the memories. Have a nice weekend, guys. Take care.